To the event show live. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for investing some of your time into the show, and we do hope you walk away with some thoughts to use in your work and in your lives. The purpose of this show is to give a voice to the event industry, to hear from some of the leaders in our industry, and we've been very fortunate to be joined on our panel over previous weeks and certainly this week with some influential leaders in the industry, and it's been great to hear their thoughts in terms of where we're at and where we're going to go. It's obviously important for this forum to be something that's adding value to you, so I do call out each week, please do drop any questions you have in the Q&A box as we go. Feel free to drop thoughts into the chat box as well. It's great for us to or get a feel for how people are feeling and what you're thinking, what's on your mind and what you want to know about. So please drop those questions in and we'll jump into those as much as we can. I'll introduce our panel and we'll jump straight into it shortly. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in the industry for 25 or so years. Had the pleasure of working with many of you and have worked across various events from large and small across sport, brand, campaigns, cause-related events. So hopefully I've got a bit of an empathy and understanding of where many of you are coming from in your work. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll continue these shows for as long as they're providing some value to you all. So I will jump into our panel. Just to introduce first up, Ant Hempel, who's the MD and founder of the Alive Events Agency. Morning, Ant. Thanks for joining us.
Morning. Thanks, Andrew.
And also Sam Middlehurst from the Fresh Sports Group. Sam, thanks for joining us this morning as well.
Good to be here, Andy.
Sam's made the effort to get up nice and early, based in Asia, in KL. So thank you, Sam. And also Ricky Marcy, who heads up the events and sponsorship area at 23 Sports and Entertainment. Thanks for joining us, Ricky.
No problem, Andrew. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Okay, Ant, I'm going to go to you first and really interested to hear your thoughts as a leader in our industry and someone who's been in the game for a while. What's your current thinking? If you can give us a bit of a rundown of your role and the work that you've been doing, but also you're keen to hear your perspective on the current state of affairs. I know the conversations that you and I have had, we've talked a bit about some of the doomsday sort of scenarios which are being spoken about in some respects, but I know you've got some views on that. So perhaps give us a quick rundown of what you do at Alive and where your head's at the moment.
Sure, thanks, mate. Well, I guess what I do now is very different to what I was doing 4 weeks ago. We're a full-service events agency, focusing on a broad range of B2B and B2C consumer and trade events, ranging from award dinners to conferencing, public events, festivals, exhibition, pretty much the full gamut of live experiences. As you say, I've been doing it for probably too long now, for a long time. And we've seen a lot of change and the industry evolve. I think this is one industry that never stops changing and evolving, but now we're being forced to potentially evolve a lot faster than maybe we would have hoped or liked. We've got a range of clients over the last 12 months. Probably a typical year for us would look like working with about 70% of our clients coming from offshore, global brands, looking to activate in or across Australia, as well as local brands. Last 12 months, a snapshot for us was product launches for Porsche, Luxottica, a conference for Sunglass Hut, launch of the W Hotels brand back into Australia, and an interesting one a few months back, just before all this hit, which was the New South Wales first big tiny houses carnival up in New South Wales, which was great. We also just finished off 2 projects for 2 cruise industry clients, so lucky to just get those ones away. I'm not sure when we'll hear from them next. Mm-hmm. So we've had a busy 12 months right up until Friday the 13th of March, which we were all standing at the Australian Grand Prix site, having just finished building the VIP activations and the first major international concert event for the Grand Prix called the Apollo Festival. And it was literally built after a 2-week build and had to dismantle the entire thing. It was a very surreal morning, very surreal day. It was a bit like being in a Stephen King movie, not knowing, no one on the site knew what was happening, mixed messages, and people at the gates not knowing whether to let people in or to let them in. And of course, you know, that was the first domino of many, many global events to fall under this. So our world right now is tilting to one of, I guess, innovation and evolving and trying to look at what's next and trying to, I think, also move away from the crystal ball and getting too heavily distracted by, I think, a lot of negativity in our industry right now, a lot of really poor, misguided clickbait with non-substantiated articles, putting fear into people, I think is really, really negative and dangerous. So, you know, our priority now is firstly our team, that we've got our team is safe, they're working from home. We've got a very collaborative culture happening right now within our team. We're all doing things we haven't done before and learning new skills. So in some ways it's an exciting time, but of course, you know, it's a daunting time commercially as well.
Absolutely. Can you tell us about some of the initial innovations that you've either put out into the market or are developing? I think it's really important that we are looking ahead now and, as you say, evolving and looking at what we can be doing. So I'd love to hear a bit about some of the work that you have been doing in that space.
Sure. Look, I think that we all know that the words floating around now have been virtual events. I think it's putting the fear into some people. I think it's creating great opportunity for some. I personally think it's a great opportunity for the industry. I think it's a natural form of evolving, not just in terms of what we can offer, but giving clients a terrific return on investment, relatively low cost, and adapting to what the environment's going to be for staging events, certainly for the short to mid-term. So I think rather than being feared off by all these things about how it's going to replace the live events, I think that's absolute rubbish. I don't buy that at all, but I think it's a terrific way to bolster an existing live event. So we've been experimenting a bit in what we're calling the hybrid experiences. We're probably not an agency that's going to start going off offering completely virtual experiences. But probably the best example of what we're doing now is with a client in Singapore. We were going to be staging a networking event for them in Sydney in June. We kept the dialogue going with them. We kept talking with them. They've been postponing the dates, not cancelling, which has been positive. And of course, the dates keep getting pushed back further and further. But as we started talking to them about the possibilities with virtual experiences and hybrid, they were quite interested, and we started to share some examples of what could be done. And it looks like now they've commissioned us to look at some kind of hybrid experiences and virtual events globally for them. So it's a great opportunity I think if you stop and really listen to your clients and have some pretty robust discussions with them about their business, their challenges, and be quite transparent about where you're at as well, and see what opportunities can come from that. But I think that looking at the technology behind hybrid experience is one thing, but creating an experience for that hybrid experience or virtual, that's to us as an agency what we're focusing on. I think that the back end and the technical of virtual events, I don't know that a client's really interested, to be honest. I think they want to see the end product. No different to when we create a live event. I don't have many clients that want to know how many lights we've got in the roof or how we built the stage. They want to see what it looks like at the end. So our focus is on creativity online, not how you create the online experience. If that makes sense.
I think that's a great way to put it. And to think in terms of what's the outcome, what's the experience we're looking to provide, and then I guess going back to what channels, what technology, what experience do we want to provide, and then building the experience, isn't it? So I think it's a good reminder in terms of the mindset we need to be taking as we design the experiences, I think.
And I don't think that and again, I think it's really important to reiterate that, I'm yet to see any properly scientifically backed up evidence of how virtual events will replace live experience. I think the human DNA is to connect. I think if anything, this hibernation has shown us how strong our desire is to connect as human beings. There can't be a better example of that. And I'm hearing so many people now experiencing Zoom fatigue. We're tired. This stuff's tiring. And I can't imagine a world where this becomes an alternative. I read a fantastic quote the other day that said, virtual events will replace real events when virtual honeymoons replace real ones.
It's a pretty good way to sum it up.
Can I just jump in there? I think it's a really interesting point there. I think, you know, one of the things that we've got to focus on when we start talking about virtual is the fact that we're creating an event. And I think that the word event is actually the important part in terms of it. And virtual is just the delivery mechanism. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's about bringing people together to have an experience, which we all know, like, it's what we do as an industry. And, you know, all I think that's been done is it's forced us to think about, at different times, what are the different delivery mechanisms we can have to create that experience. And at the end of the day, like, you know, ultimately it's about bringing people together to drive value to them, and whatever, you know, that value proposition is, like, that's what we have to deliver through that experience.
I think that's right, Sam. Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that as event producers or managers, we live in a world where we're always looking for new. It's about harnessing great talent, various skills. And I think we should be looking at this as just simply another great skill and talent we need to harness and learn a bit more about, and throw it into the mix rather than a one or the other. But I think that's spot on, Sam. Yeah.
And I think it'd be great to give a quick rundown of what it is that you and the team do at Fresh Sports Group. And I know you've got a lot to share in terms of this particular topic, and you've already been putting some experiences out into the world. So let's give us a quick rundown of the work that you guys are doing and have done in recent weeks, and I guess some initial virtual experiences that you've been putting out there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, firstly, thanks very much for having me on, Andy. You know, we've known each other for a while. Back in, I guess, my first iteration in this business, where my company, Fresh Events Asia, we created a brand called the Music Run, and we kind of grew that brand. And in your old life at Limelight Sports, we had some conversations around that property. So for us as event producers, it was about creating a brand, building experience, and it was about trying to, you know, be a leader in producing high quality fitness and lifestyle events. That was what kind of Fresh Events Asia was all about. We've created another property called Dawn, and we also work with another event called Powerman. But it's very much about, for us, it's about building the experience, building the brand, bringing people together in that live experience. I guess in a new hat that I've been wearing this year, which is all very fresh, to use another word, is more of a sports marketing consultancy role, and that's kind of taking what I used to do before I joined this industry, which was I was a management consultant, and trying to take some of the learnings that we've had of creating our own kind of event brands, which you know, tend to be quite focused around how do we build that experience, but also then connect it with a community that lives and exists online. So it's very kind of digital focused in our approach to how we market and build those brands. And I guess we're trying to take those learnings and help other organizations, both small and large, apply some of that thinking, and how they can effectively connect their strategy, whether it's a brand or a commercial strategy, with a technology roadmap to enable them to grow those engaged audiences, drive ultimately increase revenues, and build that business value for themselves. So, you know, the way that we approach things, I think it's very much about how can we, from the consultancy standpoint, how can we help other organizations better serve their customers? And for me, you know, a customer it could be a fan, it could be a participant, it could be an athlete, it could be a team, it could be a brand that you're serving. But it's about, you know, what's the toolkit that you can have to provide that better service. So I guess that's a brief kind of intro into my two hats. I guess to answer your question specifically around the whole virtual event game, one of the things that we did as we came into lockdown, we had 3 of our events that were due to be taking place, all postponed at this stage, not yet cancelled, but we'll have that conversation in a couple of months' time. We challenged the team effectively to say, okay, well, we've been talking about, you know, virtual events, and what does that look like for a long period of time? You know, how can we do something in this space effectively to really service, you know, three three lenses we were trying to look at. One was, can we deliver some value to our existing audience who we already have a relationship when we can't kind of create the live events that they're used to experiencing. The second one is in producing kind of fitness and lifestyle events. We have a network of partners, our talent, our vendors that we work with that are effectively all unemployed right now. There isn't anything for them to do, and they certainly don't have the income coming in the door. So we wanted to kind of work with some of our key partners who work on our events to say, can we try and create an experience in the virtual space? And we also wanted to then reach out to some of our stakeholders, brands that we've worked with. And in the space of kind of 2-week period, the team came up with a new brand called Stream the Beat, which was around music, fitness and wellness. It's kind of the space that we play in with our Music Run property and our Dawn property. And it was, a live stream festival that had 25 artists all streaming in from home across 7 cities across Asia Pacific, from India to Melbourne, where you are, all trying to utilize free technology. So we could deliver a product that had minimal cost on our side. We could get it online quickly, and it was a hell of a learning process. And I guess the end goal was it was a free event to try and raise some fundraising for a charity that we work with on some of our other events, which is called the Lost Food Project, which is providing food or meals to people who are in need, and particularly during the pandemic. There's a lot of people on the breadline who don't have enough food to eat. So that was the charity we supported, and we kind of got the event up and running in 2 weeks, and we had just under 1,200 people registered. We had 6,004 people who actually kind of tuned into the live viewing. We raised 32,500 meals, and we managed to kind of get the thing online in a 2-week period. And it certainly wasn't perfect, but it was a really interesting process. And something that we're kind of going to move forward and test over the coming 6 weeks with a fortnightly event now, to see how our kind of customers are engaging with it.
I think it's brilliant, Sam. And I was really keen to have you on the show, not only to hear your thoughts and the work that you've been doing. I've always appreciated the way you approach the industry, but I think it was great to see you guys challenge yourselves to not just wonder what the future event landscape might look like, but actually put something out there. And I think that's what we need to be doing is testing and learning, don't we? So what were some of the top line learnings that you did take away from the process that you can share, that you're absorbing and using?
I mean, so many. I mean, I think one of the things that is an obvious one, is that you do have to invest in this stuff. The reality is that the technology platforms that you use, and the actual broadcast experience that you're able to produce is incredibly important, because that's the essence of the product you're now creating. So I think we really did try and do it on a shoestring budget, and to kind of put it into perspective, we had live stream on Twitch, Facebook Live and YouTube. We were using YouTube's chat feature, which was then kind of how we were enabling people to engage, because we didn't have a kind of paid kind of chatbot or anything like that. We used Skype to create a dance cam, which was then able to be kind of brought in on screen and integrated. The team was utilizing Messenger and WhatsApp to coordinate across the 25 artists who were all at home. And we then had the interesting challenge where certain artists, as we all know, I think as event producers, have certain expectations of what they want to deliver. When you're at home and not everyone has green screens that you're able to utilize, not everyone has microphones that you're able to utilize, varied internet connections, beaming an internet connection from Melbourne all the way to India, and then back to KL, creates some challenges when you're using home internet.
Yeah.
So, we had obviously, thought through, what are the problems, what happens if we have an issue with the feed, and we managed to get most of the artists to pre-record their set so that we had a backup to be able to cut to in the live broadcast. But there are certain artists whose creative integrity would not be compromised, and they were not willing to pre-record stuff, and you've got to respect that. But when the very first artist that you stream has an issue with their connection, and they're one of the people who has not produced the backup, you go into that kind of crisis management planning pretty damn quick. And it's amazing, actually, in the virtual environment, how powerless you are. Actually, if you haven't done the thinking and you haven't done the planning, there's very little you can do. And I think that is a significant difference to the physical events, is that our ability to troubleshoot and firefight on events and effectively, be, excuse my language, paddling like shit underwater, but graceful as a swan on top. It's more difficult in a virtual environment. And so I think that's why, recognizing that investing in platforms to support that process, having the right people on the bus who are able to kind of be familiar with it is definitely a way of trying to reduce some of that potential friction.
It sounds like that some of the principles of events never change, Sam, whether it's physical or virtual. The first time is always the most difficult, and getting a group of people to achieve something together with many moving parts is always interesting. So I think it's fantastic that the evolution that you're pushing for. I think it's really great to see that occurring, and I'll come back to you to get some more thoughts, obviously, as we go. I just wanted to bring Ricky into the conversation. Ricky, really interested in the work that you're doing. You work across a number of sports, entertainment properties and rights holders, and work in events and activations and experiential. So can you give us a bit of a rundown of the work that you do and what you're focusing on right now as well?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So we're a marketing communications agency that primarily at the moment focuses on the sport and entertainment industry. So our key kind of service pillars are in sponsorship, in events, which kind of covers that whole gamut of events, from kind of conferences through event brand activations, experiential, to bigger live events. And then there's an entertainment kind of marketing arm to our business, and then also some media. So like the other guys and like everyone that we're dealing with in our industry, we've been hit pretty hard. And Ant mentioned before that the Friday the 13th, and none of us will forget that day, very quickly. My phone was running hot for that morning, and I think leading into that weekend, that was going to be our busiest weekend as an organisation for 3 years. I was out at the Melbourne Racing Club, and we were about to start rehearsals for the All-Star Mile. We obviously put in a fair bit of work on that. We had guys at the Grand Prix working in across some of those music executions that were going to take place. We had guys up at the SCG for the cricket, the Fashion Week. It was all happening that weekend, and all of a sudden we all had the weekend off. So it was very strange. And the flow-on effect from that was that we had various projects cancelled, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the following week. So the brakes really went on. From a business point of view now, I guess, our media side of things is ticking along. So there's still some project work there with the clients, still wanting to engage their audiences. They're still running their businesses. So there's a role for us in media. Sponsorships are a bit of a strange one at the moment. So we've got some clients in that sponsorship world. We're helping them navigate, their deals and how much, value they can achieve from their rights holders at the moment with no games on, particularly in AFL, and hopefully that's going to change pretty quickly. But still, how do we navigate the rest of the year? So there's a fair strategic piece going on with those clients, but from an events point of view and our entertainment marketing side, which is primarily revolves around live events. There's been the brakes applied. So our priorities at the moment really are, like I mentioned before, our people. just to make sure that, from a well-being point of view as well, I think we've all gone through periods over the last 4 or 5 weeks where it's been mentally, draining and challenging. So we're really mindful to make sure that our staff are as well as they possibly can be. And I think our collaboration over this 4 or 5 weeks or 6-week period has been as good as it's been, just because there's been a conscious effort to make sure that everyone's across what we're doing and what the plans are and any of the changes. And unfortunately, we're speculating a lot, but I think a lot of people, even in the health departments, are speculating a lot at the moment. And the other part we're really focusing on is what does the industry look like? What does our business look like at the back end of this? So how can we improve what we're doing? And that's not just, trying to look into the crystal ball and look into kind of digital experience or virtual or how the world changes. Also, our processes. It's not often in the agency world, a lot of business, you get time to kind of sit back and, re-look at your business. So we're using that time now. And I guess the third part is just trying to pivot, just trying to ensure that we're, we've got projects on the go at the moment to bring in that revenue, because, without any revenue at all, that's where, things are going to be really challenging. So, into that streaming virtual space, we've had to make adaptations. We've got an event this weekend with one of our clients, DG Dainty, which is an Australian true crime event. That was going to be a live event in a small arena. That's now moved into kind of the virtual space. That's one of our first forays into that. We're looking at other options or other kind of events to try and move into that space as well. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment, Andrew. It's been difficult, but and I guess the fourth part of that is working with our clients to try and support them. Nothing changes, from their point of view. They, as long as their business is able to operate, and the retail sector has been hit really hard, obviously hospitality. But for those businesses that are in sectors that can operate, we're just taking them ideas. It's a really difficult time. It's not, we're not receiving any briefs. They're really not reaching out up to us a great deal, but we're being proactive. We're taking ideas. How can we help you engage your audience and connect with your audience during this time where things are so different? Some of those ideas are sticking, others, aren't, but that's okay. That's just the part of the environment right now. And everyone's struggling. It's not just, the event world. It's all of our clients are going through their own individual challenges. So it's just, for us to be there and support them is important to us.
Oh, the great call outs, I think, Ricky, thank you. And I really interested, I'll come back to you and feel free to jump in, Ant and Sam, but I guess that's that thinking you're doing strategically in terms of behind the scenes, how you will build your teams and maybe change the model in future, or will it return to sort of the norm, and how you will collaborate across the industry to build these experiences? Do you see things sort of changing back of house? And then, of course, at the front of house, how do you see these events and experiences stepped out? We've talked about virtual events, obviously. Do we see smaller groups and gatherings being a sort of a stepping stone to the larger events and experiences as we're allowed to do so? Guess interested in your thoughts, Ricky and Ant and Sam.
I think the first point for us is, from a workforce point of view, how do we improve kind of our efficiency and the ways of working, where we started, and then adapting to where we think we need to get to, and that's upskilling as well. So what are the gaps in our business? We're doing the old-fashioned SWOT analysis. What are the opportunities for us? What are our weaknesses, and how can we improve them in the next couple of months, so that when we start coming out the other side of this, that we're we provide a better value proposition to our clients, or for clients that we're talking to about new business. So my opinion in terms of where we go to next, I think you're right. I think it's going to be a bit of a slow burn over the next couple of months. I think we're in a really difficult times. And I was watching the news this morning, and obviously some of those gathering restrictions in other states outside of Victoria have been eased a little bit. So that's the first step. I think there's some really positive news there. But I think we've just got to tread really carefully, those events to start with. And I don't think it'll move in different, certain events will be able to move a little quicker than others. Obviously, mass participation events requiring large number of attendees are probably going to be last to tick over. but yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a slow burn, and then we're going to move into a phase where, you know, if we're coming back to these events, they're going to look very different to you know, what we traditionally recall these events, you know, did look like. You know, I think we'll just need to adapt to that, you know, from a sanitary point of view, and how we plan that in smaller teams so that we're not interacting as much, a lot of digital communication, you know, even engagement, you know, at these events, you know, the close proximity of people engaging together through promotional stuff. And we do a lot of brand activation. So a lot of our work is for clients who are trying to engage an audience at a larger event. So, you know, how do we adapt to that? So, you know, if we can't bring people into an ownable space there, how are we doing that? We're doing that through kind of mixed reality screens. Are we doing that from a distance? This is all, you know, it's all new. It's new to us, but we're moving pretty quickly in that.
And I think to add to that, and Andrew, to your point about the smaller events coming back, I think there is definitely some opportunities with clients where they can look at getting some direct messaging to a much more targeted audience. So there's no doubt there's some opportunities there. And again, we've got two clients in that space at the moment, and one was doing a large event at the NGV last year, or the last couple of years. And even before this happened, it started the conversation around, should we be doing something a little bit more boutique and much more targeted at some of their prospects and clients for acknowledging some of their, you know, key clients, because they felt that with a gathering of 300, 400, 500 people at a large gala event, how much time were the heads of their company and the CEO actually getting with their clients? So they were already looking at ideas of doing a series of smaller events that might be 10 or 15 clients, but over 5 or 6 nights. It had nothing to do with smaller budgets or anything else. It was simply about much more targeted. We're using the word kind of boutique or handmade experiences. So I think that there'll be a huge growth in that area. I think it's clients will see that we can achieve the same results talking to a smaller audience than filling a room with 500. We had another client in the motor sector with a launch, and they did a, you know, big budget bells and whistle launch, and they knew that of 300 or 400 people in the room, probably only 10 or 15 were going to buy the product. So again, that triggered the thinking, should we not be targeting a much more, I guess, an incredible money can't buy experience for that audience rather than the 300 or 400 hangers on. So I think you'll see a big growth in that industry in the corporate sector around very targeted, tailored events and experiences. Obviously, it's not a solution for public events and larger gatherings.
Mm. Yeah, I think from an experiential point of view as well, you know, we've always had the philosophy that we're providing these amazing, deep engagement experiences for few. It's not often you can provide a deep engagement from a brand point of view for you know, 100,000 people. So how do we provide this great experience for a few that then can be shared either by them or by us to amplify that to the many, to the masses? So what we've probably done now through this period is accelerate, you know, our capabilities in being able to do that. You know, I think that, you know, the ability to be able to stream and to put content online and all the social channels has been there. But I think that as a community, as, you know, general public are now a little bit more accustomed to receiving this information online. And for our, you know, our listeners out there might be quite adapted, you know, doing this and receiving digital content, but there's you know, the masses out there probably, you know, they weren't used to sitting, you know, in front of their screen and having Zoom calls, but now it's become a little bit more of the norm. And to your point before, Anne, I think that, you know, absolutely agree that, you know, virtual events will never replace, you know, your physical events. However, what they will be able to do is allow us to connect with more people. You know, an event in Melbourne can now be shared in a more valuable way, or provide a better experience to those around the rest of the country and even, you know, cross borders.
Yeah, great. That's great points. Sam, your thoughts? I know you're always interested in challenging the status quo. What's your view on it?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've all commented that it's difficult to kind of be able to predict where we're going to net out in terms of how quickly things can come back online. I mean, there's logic around smaller stuff starting first. We've always got to remember we're considered non-essential by the powers that be in terms of our ability to pull people together. Which is, I guess, a bit frustrating, and perhaps that will change over time, given the role that I think we play as a cultural engagement, but also the physical and mental health, which contributes to productivity in the workplace. Which I think, you know, given the economic challenges we're going to be facing, potentially there's the opportunity to look at the conversation in a slightly different way. But I guess kind of to come back to basics and kind of look at what us as organizations can do. And I think it depends on what your role is within the overall ecosystem. I think the one thing that everyone is going to be feeling right now is the pinch in terms of when revenues come back online to levels that become meaningful to what you've originally built your business model around. So I think at that time, you know, what we can all do is we can all kind of come back to, you know, why are we here? Like, you know, what is the purpose that we're trying to do? Who are we actually serving, and what do they want to receive from us? And I think we've got to start by re-asking that question within the context of what we're facing right now and what we're potentially likely to be facing moving forward. You know, from that, we should be able to derive very clear objectives, and those are the strategic and the commercial objectives that should be driving our business. And that can enable us to start asking the question about how can revenue come back online? Because if that isn't the case, then you've got a very different question to answer, unless you've got very strong, you know, financial legs to stand on, which I think a lot of businesses in our space and within sport in general don't have that. So for me, you know, that lends itself to the next question, which is around our audience. You know, who is our existing audience? Who is our potential audience? And what is the value that we then need to provide them to deliver on what they want from us? You know, the why we actually exist in this space, and then linking that back to the commercial objectives. I think if you go through that very, you know, I'm not trying to oversimplify it. It's a very complicated process, but it's something that we often forget. We do at the start and we don't revisit. And for me right now, everything has changed. You know, the conversation that we've just had for the last 30 minutes highlights that our industry has changed. And to think that it will go back to where it was right now, I think it was before, is ludicrous. And I think that commercially, everybody, because of the economic challenges that we will be facing from this, let's not forget, we're about to go into globally the biggest recession for a long period of time. And I'm no economist, but when that happens, when you're classified as non-essential, you're going to have to be doing a hell of a lot better than you were doing before to fight for a smaller share of revenue that's available. Okay, that's just the simple fundamentals of the situation that we're facing as an industry. So I don't mean to be super negative. What I just want everyone to get to grips with is the fact that we really have to take a long, hard look at ourselves and really understand the value proposition that we're providing to our customers. And I think that enables us then to have much more clarity about how we can actually commercialize the business moving forward. And things will change, 100% they will change. Will we get back to creating unbelievable massive events? Yeah, we will. But, you know, is that in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, 18 months' time, longer than that? I don't know. There's many moving parts, and a lot of those moving parts are not in our hands as organizers of non-essential mass gatherings.
But don't you think, to that point, Sam, I feel that I agree with the sentiments completely, but I think as an industry now that's been literally had, in the most part, individuals and businesses had 90%, if not 100% of their revenue taken away. Do you not feel that constant kind of messaging and that kind of tone that's going out to people, not knowing when their next job will be, not knowing if their doors will open again? Do you think it's time we need to shift on and be focusing on the opportunities now and what can happen and what we can create, maybe where there are opportunities? Because I think, like you rightly said, you could talk to event professionals all around the world. I think your answer is the right one. Nobody knows. But I feel now, looking at the clutter and the noise that's happening online with the way too many disconnected industry platforms that all are conflicting, they're all disagreeing, they're all saying different things. It's almost worse than watching commercial news. There doesn't seem to be a collective positivity around the industry now about opportunities and what we can be doing and where short-term opportunities might exist. And I think that's what a lot of people are wanting to hear. I think we're all aligned with the gloom and doom right now. What do you think the opportunities are for people right now in the industry?
So for me, to answer the first question, which is the negativity, like I totally agree. There's a lot of scaremongering out there, And I don't mean to be that voice, but I think that the important voice is for everyone to actually get real and go back to the basics of what you can control. And what you can control is what you as an organization do. And so for me, the fundamentals is actually looking at the relationship that you have with your customer, whoever that is. If that's a sponsor, okay, how are you going to deliver value to that sponsor? Okay, and you might not be able to provide the product or the service that you've been providing right now, but what do you actually have that they want and that they need? And how can you put a commercial proposition together that enables you to drive value back to them?
Yeah.
Okay. And that to me is, I'm just going back to the fundamentals of what we need to do as businesses to drive value, which will then produce revenue. So if you take the example of what a sponsor looks at right now, you can look at lots of different lenses. A lot of them are afraid to have conversations. And I work with brands that are afraid to have conversations right now because they're quite traditional, quite conservative. Other brands are actually really focusing on how they can have a conversation that they think might be relevant to people. And you find people going back to cause-based conversations. And how do you then use the platforms that we have to enable people to have those conversations? We're still a medium that people can use to have those conversations. So how do we create those narratives around that? How do we recognize that as organizers of events, we have relationships with them? We know how to communicate to them. We know how to sell to them. Okay, so how do we double down on that knowledge and start actually driving value through the relationships that we have to other people who want to have those relationships? Like, that's ultimately why they're giving you sponsorship money in the first place. So how do we then take that relationship and look at it in a different way? And, virtual is a good example of how you can build a different experience around it. How you monetize it is a different matter, because we're not used to putting the same monetary value on that experience in a different space than we are in the physical space. But it's up to us to build those commercial models and prove the value and have the metrics that enable us to answer the questions. That's where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to be a scaremonger. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say we've got to get real, and we've got to own the fact that we've got a challenge right now to come and get revenues back online. And we do that by doing what we do best, which is building the relationships, driving the value, and then putting a commercial proposition around it.
Look, and I think, Sam, it's a good call out to me to be going back to the fundamentals and first principles, if you like, particularly in periods of change. I think, but at any time, I think it's important that we go back to what is it that we're really looking to achieve, and some of the and then unpacking, I guess, the ways to achieve that. So I think it's really good point, good call out. And I'm conscious there's a few questions in the chat box as well, which we haven't come to. And I think there's a few there from Jody and Jasmine, really around, I suppose, this timeline and these next phases. And I'm not sure how many answers we all have between us. They're very, very, very good questions. I suppose, do any of you have a sort of a sense in terms of this stepping out? I know dates are difficult to sort of pin on things. Do you think, Jody's asking, do you think we'll have a big flood of events coming back at a particular time once that sort of tap is turned back on? And maybe one for you, Ricky, in terms of sponsorship, is it going to be quite a long time before we see brands prepared to reinvest, or is it a bit of a case-by-case basis?
I'll look into that sponsorship question first. Then it's the sponsorship world is it's challenging for right holders to start with in terms of procuring sponsors and then commercial support. So we're starting from a difficult kind of a challenge for those rights holders. The next couple of months is going to be really difficult for them. There's a couple of factors. One is mainly the factor is around the financials of these companies, the economic downturn. We're going in a recession. Are the businesses going to have the marketing dollars that they once had to invest in basically their entire marketing mix? So we will find that some businesses, look at sponsorship and see great value in it and continue to invest in it. But that'll be at the sacrifice of above the line or some other kind of a marketing element. So, and sponsorship, like Sam said before, it allows you to connect with an audience you can't necessarily connect with. So If businesses are finding, challenges in that space, if there's, business issues that sponsorship can help you achieve, well, sponsorship's the right way to go. So, yes, there's going to be some challenges over the next couple of years. Whether they invest, I think will be the same question in whether businesses invest, before this. Does sponsorship make sense to them? Is there a business challenge that sponsorship can help them achieve? And if the answer is still yes on the back end of this, well, yes, they should be investing in sponsorship and looking at ways to use that platform the best they can. What we probably will find is that kind of rights and access to the teams and clubs and associations may get a little bit cheaper. So maybe from a value point of view and return on investment over the next couple of years, that may be the way to go. So,
do you think, Ricky, that I've noticed quite a few brands jumping onto projects and causes over the last few months, whether they be online or other, that seem to be more linked to wanting to be their brand connected to a positive cause, whether it be supporting nurses or frontline, whatever it might be. And clearly the investment's not been measured against the ROI. It's not maybe typically against the typical metrics around reach or engagement. Do you see a trend like that continuing, where brands are jumping on board because they want to associate with a positive cause rather than purely for the known metrics around ROI?
Yeah, I think so. We've seen that across the globe over the last, 6 weeks, and you're referring to that. And then I think businesses over the last 5 or 10 years have been kind of investing into that space more. They see it as a brand building exercise. I think consumers and their audiences, there's an expectation now that brands aren't just about their product and just about selling. It's about, what purpose they've got. And, we're working with a couple of clients now that are very purpose focused as opposed to product focused, which is really refreshing, and it's fantastic to work with. And a sponsorship point of view, when you're trying to leverage those sponsorships, I think that's a little bit easier when you're trying to connect with a football club's fan base, as opposed to trying to sell a product in. You're selling a purpose in that your client really believes in. The scope and the flexibility you have to work with that is great. So I think you will. I don't think at the moment that audiences are wanting to hear the hard sell, and marketing managers are smart. They're not pushing those messages to deaf ears. No. So I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to see a lot of that. I think we will transition out of that a little bit, but a lot of the change that we're making now, I think, is going to then flow on to what we consider in 5 years' time to be our new norms. So a lot of, whether it be digital experiences or, the investment strategies from a sponsorship point of view, or, how businesses are doing things from a holistic marketing perspective, are going to change, and they're going to evolve. It's not going to be a certain day where we just click over. It'll evolve, and we'll look back and think, well, yeah, that did change over the past 6 months or 18 months, and this is the new norm. So,
and I think, Andrew, one of the questions around, is there going to be this sudden influx of everybody wanting to venue that this ramps up so quickly? I think there are so many factors that would probably indicate that won't happen. I feel that firstly, you're going to have a lot of brands that may have been proposing certain types of events or activities at venues which have now changed their marketing strategy altogether. They may have moved the events budgets into digital, which a lot are doing, or the budgets may have simply been iced. Others will want to ramp up. Others will be postponing and changing dates. So I don't think we're going to kind of go from we can't open venues up to suddenly next Saturday it's all on and everybody can book. And of course, there'll then be the controlled environments in these events. And I think one bit of, again, crystal balling a bit here, but if you look at the government saying that in the next several weeks, couple of months, we get to gatherings of 100, that's a non-controlled gathering. So you would, and I know there's some industry people lobbying the government now to say, well, surely if you can have a non-controlled gathering of 100, you could argue, well, that you could have a controlled gathering of a lot more. For example, if you can put 100 people together on the field, surely we could put 300 to 400 to 500 in a venue with the right controls and measures in place. So I'm quietly optimistic that smaller conferences, smaller gatherings around that kind of level, I believe that's achievable in the next few months.
It's related to that point, Ant. Do you feel as an industry that we have a voice, or we look? I think Sam called out some good perspectives that that our events potentially are non-essential in the whole scheme of things. but of course we are a large industry which has been very adversely affected. Do you feel that we are being supported sufficiently, or that there should be a greater voice for the industry with government and other spheres?
I'm seeing quite a bit of lobbying. I don't think at all the industry's been ignored or forgotten. I sit down each night and kind of think, can you imagine being in government right now? Can you imagine being Scott Morrison each night? I mean, it's the mind boggles at what they're trying to do with. So I think it would be naive to think that our industry's not been acknowledged or it's not being considered. I think it has to be, because of the amount of jobs that it accounts for, the amount of revenue that it applies for, not just for hospitality, but for tourism, for inbound travel, for so many sectors that are connected to our industry. I mean, even travel and logistics, freight industries that are linked to touring and to, I mean, it's endless, the kind of the connectivity we have across so many other industries with events. So I don't think it's been ignored. What I have noticed, I think our industry is very fragmented. And I think we're lacking a collective voice. I think we're lacking a collective, consistent, reliable voice that could be sending out positive, clear, accurate information to the industry. I think I've noticed that's where a lot of this confusion and panic is coming from, because people are just, popping up clickbait left, right and centre with alarming headlines about the end of our industry. And I haven't heard anyone here saying this is the end of our industry. We're just talking about change and evolution. So I think there is a voice, but I think that we need to come together more of an industry and have a more consolidated voice that can help people working in the industry to get a bit more guidance and clarity of what lies ahead.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I think it's a really good point, and I think that applies to the event industry. I think it applies to sport, and you're seeing that in a lot of kind of sports globally, around the fact that they're recognizing that there needs to be more coordination, there needs to be more collaboration, and there needs to be clarity in terms of how they approach those bigger conversations that transcend the sport itself. And I think that's super important. And I think to come back to your second point that you made there about kind of where are we in terms of moving forward, in any time of challenge, it creates great innovation and it creates great creativity, because it forces us to think differently, and it forces us to kind of really come together and try and push the needle. And I think that is where the opportunity is to get better at what we do. And it's, if those people who don't get better at what we do, they will have a really tough time, because everything is going to come to a head at some point. But if you can really innovate and you can really drive forward and kind of push yourself to ultimately come back to the fundamentals of why you exist and the value that you need to create and how you're going to commercialize that, you will be a better business. We will create better events. And 100%, to come back to a point that Ant made earlier, like we're social creatures, and sport and events are cultural phenomenons, and they will continue to be that moving forward. They might be under a slightly different kind of guise than they have been before, and the commercial models around them, I'm pretty sure, will change, but people's desire to have those experiences, I think, will still be there. And so for us, it's about how do we just get better and smarter at how we are delivering those things.
I think it's a great message, Sam, and I think we all share the sentiment and the belief around that. I'm conscious we're coming up towards our hour, so I did want to go back to each of you just for, I guess, final thoughts. And there's a couple of questions we haven't addressed specifically. Jasmine asking about when we think hiring will commence again, and hopefully we've sort of given you a bit of an idea in terms of the timeline on things. But it is, I think the main thing to be doing is just to keep in tune with what's going on in the industry and keep in contact with employers, and once they know how their future looks, and as they start to rebuild their teams, I think they'll be in a place to rehire. But I think the main thing is to be in front of people and stay in front of people as much as you can. Danielle's put a great question in there really around how the experiences might evolve, and I think we're talking a bit about that in terms of how the proposition needs to be looked at. So probably haven't got time to dive into that one too deeply, but I think it's a good question about how to look at the experiences and what we offer to the different groups within the market. So, but I'll go back to you all. Perhaps Ricky, if you wanted to give us your any sort of final thoughts or takeaways or advice that you have front of mind for the audience.
Yeah, I think, obviously, we're specifically talking about events, and there's a lot of event managers and people working in events listening. So I think that, the change is inevitable. That change we're going to see, take effect, as soon as we get back into, delivering these physical events, and the change is going to look, quite extensive when we first go back. All of our operations in terms of, the pre-planning and being out on site and the like are going to change. Our requirements and OH&S and security and sanitisation and all of that, those things are going to be very different. My feel is that the further we go down the track and a vaccine's found, that we'll get back to events that traditionally look the way that we look at them now. But there will be, there'll be hangovers. There'll be long-lasting changes. But I think the advice is don't be scared of change. I don't think, we look at change, and I think it's a human instinct to be concerned about things that are changing, but be positive about it. Our event, the industry, sport and entertainment events has been changing, ongoing since, the first ever event. Who would have thought, going to the MCG 15 years ago, you used to walk straight in. Now you get pat down by 2 security before you move in with a metal detector over you. Like, that's a change that was made. Smoking outside of venues. Smoking inside of venues, 20 years ago when in a gig, the calls at the time were, well, this is going to be the end of that. So I think there is going to be change. It'll evolve, but we'll get back to a point where we recognise these events. There'll be large gatherings. It just may take a little bit of time. So I think everyone's got to just stick in there, do the best you can, and to all the guys' point, upskill the best you can, because it'll be a slow burn to start with. And as an agency or as a rights holder putting on an event, we're going to have some financial challenges, and we're going to want the best people working on that. So those that can provide, multi-skills and provide us value is the ones that we're going to be focusing on to start with.
Yeah, great messages, Ricky. Yeah, I think it's really great to have front of mind. Sam, your thoughts, sort of final takeaways for us to walk away with?
Yeah, I think, just echoing a couple of Ricky's points there, I think we've got to love change. We've got to embrace it, because this is the environment that we're in right now. And I think we've got to look at the positives that come with change, which is the opportunity to build new things, new stuff. It's to look at things in a different way. And I think that, I really like your point of, when you're looking at businesses and the value that you can bring to a business, people got to be able to operate with multiple hats on, multi-discipline, multi-skill, multi-lenses. Okay. And I think that should be something that anyone who's listening to this and wanting to know how can I add value to a business that currently is feeling the pinch right now, it's come to the table with a can-do attitude of what can be done differently, and the ability to kind of work hard, get your head down, and look at things in a broad spectrum of across a broad spectrum of things, because I think there's many different moving parts right now that we need to be able to deal with, and so we've got to keep that breadth of thought as we're approaching things.
Yeah, great point, Sam. Likewise, I think it's really important to have that front of mind for everyone as we step things out. Ant, I'll come over to you at final thoughts to share.
Sure. I think first and foremost, don't obsess about the daily news. I think switch off. There's nothing new about this happening day to day that I think impacts us personally every day or every hour. I don't think we're at that. I think that was maybe the first week or two. I think it's important to disengage from that, because mentally what that does, it frees you up to think about more positive things. And then if you're stuck in that fog, you're probably not going to contribute a lot to your business, or maybe upskilling or attending other things. So, and I think to that, choose an industry voice that is credible and reliable, and maybe follow their feed, their updates. There are several good industry bodies around. I'm not going to mention them now because it's probably too political, but there are some good ones that can be a voice. Choose one. I think don't spend the day jumping all over the place looking at dozens and dozens of feeds, because the contradictions are confusing. I think, as Ricky said earlier, look at your business. Look at it now. If you do have your own business, have a look at where you can improve, evolve, change systems, refine what's been working or what hasn't. Upskilling, I think, let's not ignore the fact hybrid events are here to stay. Virtual events are only here to grow. So I think that if we can, you can try and upskill. There's lots of online courses, things you can watch, webinars you can watch. I think it's an important thing to at least understand broadly what it is and how it works. And I think also, you know, to Ricky's point, the industry changes all the time, and this change is not a bad thing. You know, 10 years ago, advertising industries thought PR and experiential was a waste of time. Well, they probably drive most of their revenue off those two factors now in their above the line campaigns and below the line. So, you know, the industry moves quickly. We're just being forced to move a bit faster than usual. And thirdly, I mean, Andrew, thank you for putting this show together. This book is a great read. I've read it. And for those who haven't read Andrew's book, I think it's, be careful what you wish for. We've all got a bit of downtime now, so it's time to do a bit of reading as well.
Thanks, Ant. Appreciate the plug. Thank you very much. And look, really appreciate everyone's contribution today. Thank you to all our panelists. They've given up their time to share their thoughts. So much great thinking that I think we can all take away and use in our work. So really appreciate all your time, and Sam, Ricky, and thanks for everyone for joining us. Really do appreciate you supporting the show, and hopefully it's providing some value to you in your work. We're going to keep these shows going. We're going to go to every 2 weeks from now on. I'm conscious there's no sort of shortage of webinars out there in the world at the moment, but the feedback we're having, this one's playing a role for people. So hopefully you can keep joining us. I've got some great panelists lined up for future shows, but also please do let us know who you'd like to hear from. Obviously the point of the show is to hear from the people and hear about the things which are important to you in your work. So please drop me a line, drop me an email to let me know what you'd like us to raise in future shows. Look, there's a lot of great resources out there. You can jump onto my website for some resources, including the book that Ant's just kindly waved in front of you. That's available as an electronic version to download for free on my website. I'm a big believer in getting information out there and sharing that. We've had a lot of great guests on the event show as a podcast as well. There's a experience design theme to the current series. Been speaking to some really interesting people about some of the things we've been talking about today and how to evolve and innovate in our work. So please jump on that as well. We're also running some programs to help people navigate their way through the current phase. So please just touch base if any of that can be of interest to you. But thank you all again for joining the show. Thanks very much to our panel, and we hope you can tune in again soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrew.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.